challenges that we'll show in the data, as well as housing affordability challenges, where all three of these come together: housing quality, around the changing market, and around smaller household size. So in terms of household size, we can see that from 2000, about 70,000 households were one-person households. We're now up above 90,000. And when we look at the number of bedrooms in a household unit, the one bedrooms have gone from being about 15% down to 12%. So we have an increase in the number of households. That trend is continuing, but a decrease in the number of homes that are affordable to those households. Similarly, we have a shrinking number, this slightly in the larger family size, but an increase in the number of 4 and 5 bedroom homes. Sorry. In terms of housing diversity, about 52% are attached single family or detached single family. About a third of the overall housing units are of 2 or more, and that's also not keeping pace with where the trends are in terms of growth. About 15% of the housing units in Prince George's County were built since 2000. A large majority of those units have been built outside of the Beltway. In terms of housing problems, there's an increase in the number of households that have a housing problem, and a significant increase in the number of households, almost double the number of households that are paying at least 50% of their income for housing or extremely cost burden. In terms of changing rental costs, contrasting that within the region, Prince George's median rent has increased by about 7% over 5 years. That's the second highest cost increase only in Washington, D.C. So in terms of implementation, there's a lot of success has been made by the county for the past 3 years. Wanted to highlight the working group has met over that window for more than 50 hours of dialogue as a working group. They've put out 3 annual reports documenting the success. They've got 8 actions from this working group that have been recommended through 2019 to 2022, and the county has funded some substantial work. So $15 million towards the right of first refusal program, which has been lauded as one of the best around. A $10 million allocation to the Housing Trust Fund, Housing Investment Trust Fund, and about $2.3 million to support community navigators to help families get connected to housing that's affordable to them in the county. Those 8 actions include strengthening the rights and responsibilities of tenants and landlords, looking at inclusionary zoning requirements that would be more market informed and strengthening those requirements, looking at adopting a universal design policy, also looking at building capacity within county staff, looking at a more culturally competent staff to serve those changing demographics. We mentioned the Housing Investment Trust Fund increase. There's the right of first refusal provisions. There's also been a range of resources for households that are experiencing a housing crisis, and the recommendation for the land bank to support redevelopment of residential property that's abandoned. So in terms of the upcoming, the 2022 recommendations from the working group, there were kind of 4 dimensions, 4 priorities that were highlighted. One around tenure, one around price point, one around location, one around type. In terms of tenure, the recommendation from the working group is to think about a split, pretty even split among homeownership and rental opportunities. In terms of price point, the recommendation is to look at a range of price options across occupations and lifestyles so that residents of the county can afford to stay within the county. In terms of location, thinking about priority for transit-oriented development, especially those with multimodal options. And in terms of type, increasing diversity by addressing systemic barriers to housing. So what that relates to in terms of the strategic shifts and the tools that are needed, recommendations from the working group are to accelerate housing production of committed affordable units with continued investment across the tools that the county has supported. It's to lower the rental cost, as Hillary mentioned, of new rental units, possibly significantly based on both the funding that's available and the tools we have. 3 is around incorporating more opportunities for affordable homeownership, looking for opportunities to build wealth, to address racial wealth inequity. And the 4th is around increasing market rate affordable homeownership near transit, having that be the focus. Those recommendations really focused on utilizing, scaling, expanding some of the county's tools that have been proven to work well, including the trust fund, including right of first refusal, and really supporting broader connected communities. And then in terms of the areas where kind of each of the six, we talk about the specifics of each of 6 areas from the working group. These 2 around land use and zoning and development incentives are the first 2 of 6. Really thinking about development standards, about ADUs or accessory dwelling units, and inclusionary zoning laws, tools the county could implement. Development incentives, thinking about what would create better alignment between both housing as well as the other goals that the county has for economic development, workforce development, and balancing any reduced fees with the goals that you have and outputs. There's also 2 additional goals around process improvements and access to ownership. Things take time to development, so accounting for those timelines associated for affordable housing development, making sure that they're consistent with the resources that are available, and using consistent criteria for when additional staff support may be needed. In terms of access to homeownership, there's opportunities to strengthen the homeownership program within the county to provide more opportunity for entry-level homes that allow for economic mobility and for more homeowner preparation so that folks are ready to take on that opportunity. And then lastly, the last 2 recommendations deal with the Housing Advisory Board and the Landlord Tenant Commission. Monitoring and implementing core housing recommendations so you can track where the progress is, advising on new tools and how they're working, educating residents and current residents about their opportunities for housing, and on the Landlord Tenant Commission, similarly educating tenants and landlords, building from existing relationships, and looking for to engage relevant subject matter experts in the county around mediation, around legal aid, and around housing counseling. So thank you for the time, and I'm going to pass it on to Stephanie.
Good afternoon. My name is Stephanie Prestel, and I'm the Deputy Director with Housing Initiative Partnership. We are a nonprofit affordable housing developer and HUD certified counseling agency based here in Prince George's County. We've been serving the residents of Prince George's County for almost 35 years. We are both a developer and a housing counseling agency, and what I'd like to do today is talk a little bit about how we utilize some of the tools that you heard about earlier today and implement them on the ground. I'm going to start with multifamily housing. This is a project that we currently have under construction. This is called the Residence at Springbrook. This is in Clinton, Maryland. It is going to be 90 units of senior affordable housing, and we hope to have it complete this winter. But what I want to highlight here are the financing sources that you need for multifamily housing. It needs a whole range of resources from a variety of different partners. And in this, we have low-income housing tax credits, which are federal dollars, but they're administered by the state of Maryland. And Maryland also provided a loan called Rental Housing Works. We have private money that's called the Federal Home Loan Bank loan. And then on top of that, we have 2 sources from Prince George's County that you heard about earlier. One are the home funds, which are a really critical tool that are very flexible dollars that can be used for multifamily and single family work. And then we also have the Housing Investment Trust Fund. So that new tool that the county's really started investing in, that was another very important piece to close the gap so that we could get to settlement. The other piece I'd like to highlight with this project is the partnership that it takes to do these projects. This is an exciting project because we as a nonprofit are partnering with Bank of America CDC, which is a quasi-nonprofit and a banking partner, as well as with Parallax Development Group, which is a minority developer based here in Prince George's County. So among these 3 partners, we're really able to work collaboratively and bring a lot of development and community experience to the project. And as you're looking at projects going forward, you're going to see that it takes this kind of partnership to really bring these projects to fruition. I know this is a small slide, but I also want to highlight the 3rd tool we use from the toolbox of Prince George's County, and that's the pilot. So we received a reduction in property taxes for this project. And by getting that pilot, it reduced how much we have to pay in taxes by $72,000 per year. Why is that important? Well, that translates into more debt that we're able to get for the project. If we're able to go to a private source and get more debt, It means we need less of the county's other resources or the state resources to make all of the numbers align. So in this case, we were able to leverage another $1.2 million in debt. So all of these tools play a very important part in getting affordable housing to the market and to our residents here in Prince George's County. I'd also like to highlight that these projects are very high quality. We are held to very high standards, both from a green standard and from the quality of the amenities that we offer. HIP not only is a developer, but we provide resident services on site in all of our communities. So we have ongoing staff that work with residents for community building and to assist in any way that residents need to make sure they're able to maintain their housing. The next piece of development that HIP is involved with is single family. As you heard from the Hoffa report, we need as much single family as we need rental housing. On the single family side, we think this is such an important program because it's really a way to start building equity and assets for families. Our program is one where for most of our homes we buy and renovate single family homes that we sell to first time home buyers earning 80% or less of area median income. They participate in our home buyer education program, which is HUD certified, so that they're qualified and well prepared. And in this case, the way we partner with the county is that we need subsidy. When we buy and renovate homes, again, we're doing it to a high standard. Our homes have been underinvested in and they need a lot of renovation to be up to standard and high quality. So we always spend more on a home than we sell it for. And as a result, we need something to fill the gap. And there are a variety of ways we can fill that gap. We have different tools. We have state dollars we can use between Community Legacy and NED dollars, but we also rely on Prince George's County funds as well. We have in the past used home funds, and we more recently have been using CDBG funds. And we've been able to use CDBG funds to help with the to help subsidize acquisition and in some cases subsidize renovation costs. So this is a really important tool to help us get affordable housing to the marketplace and to really help families build equity. Another single family program we have is around the that tenet of preservation. This is called the Housing Rehabilitation Assistance Program. I think you heard about it earlier. This is 0%, essentially a home equity loan. It's deferred for low and moderate income homeowners. And it allows us to really address life safety issues, code violations, things that are really have been unaffordable for the homeowner to address. And with this program, we've served almost 100 families. The average loan amount is $52,000. The average household income is about $47,000. So that's about 50% of area median income. So we're serving a fairly low income homeowner. And 50% of our participants have been seniors. So we definitely see a lot of seniors who are retired and not able to afford these kinds of repairs, but would like to stay in their home. And the last piece I'd like to touch on is our counseling program. And one of the tenets we heard about earlier from the Hoffa report is really strengthening and growing counseling that's available to our residents. Their studies have shown that counseling is a very, very valuable tool to really increasing savings, reducing debt, and helping families achieve homeownership. It's a very important strategy when we're looking at equity and inclusion in homeownership. As you likely know, in Prince George's County, African American and Hispanic homeownership trails white ownership by about 20%. So we have a lot of work to do to make sure we're being equitable, and home buyer education is one of the key components to that to really help families achieve that dream. We are one of the largest housing counseling agencies in the state of Maryland. We're bilingual. We've served over 30,000 residents over our history, and in the last couple of years with COVID, we've also had an expanded role working with the ERAP Rental Assistance Program, doing a lot of outreach to our most vulnerable residents to make sure that they're receiving the types of services and assistance that they need. And we do this all in collaboration with the county. So we really view ourselves as your partner to help the county achieve the goals that it would like to achieve for its residents. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Sarah Bettinger. I'm the Vice President of Community Development with Habitat for Humanity Metro Maryland. Many of you may know that Habitat for Humanity is a global organization. We have helped more than 39 million people across the world get into housing And we work through local chapters like ours. While we are hyper-focused on access to affordable homeownership, we are very supportive of housing across the continuum. We sort of see housing as a ladder, right? You need every rung in order for folks to move into homeownership. So we do our work through two main programs. The first is through home purchase, so helping new families get into homes, to build equity, to build wealth. And then also do a significant amount of work on the home preservation side. So working with families that already own their homes, but again, need necessary health and safety and renovation improvements, accessibility modifications. And that's where I'm going to focus today because that's where our main partnership is with Shores County. And so last year we launched in partnership with the county the Homeownership Preservation Program, and I know you all heard about that earlier today, so I'm not going to go into details on the program specifically, but I want to mention how grateful we are to the council. This was really a council-led initiative. You all passed $1 million in state and local ARPA funding last year. That was the money to launch this program. And so we've been able to help a lot of families so far through that money. This is an outline of sort of the process that clients go through as they're going through the program. I want to highlight a couple of things here. One is that we've received over 1,000 inquiries for this program so far. And so there's a huge amount of need, and we've seen the need only continue to grow throughout COVID. I'll also point out that I think there's a really unique feature to this. We worked with an occupational therapist who is very skilled in home repairs and construction. And so for folks living with disabilities or older adults looking to age in place, she will actually walk through the home with them and make specific recommendations to what would be most effective for changes to fit that person's specific needs. So this is sort of typical repairs that we're doing, certainly not an exhaustive list, but again, here I'll point out, I'm constantly amazed and frightened by the number of people we see living in our community that do not have heat. So we do a lot of furnace replacements through the program. And then also relating to accessibility, we see a significant number of folks who are not safely able to get in and out of their homes, go up and down stairs, bathe, cook, all sorts of things. And so those accessibility modifications are really critical to families as well. So who are we serving through this program? So with the initial $1 million, we're able to serve 39 households. It's about 100 people, and really a broad range of ages. We're serving children all the way up through older adults and seniors. And as we look at the race and ethnicity data, I'll mention that Habitat for Humanity really sees home preservation as a housing and economic justice issue, right? And so I think generally across the United States, white families have about 10 times the wealth of African American families, and that is because of home ownership. So we want to make sure that not only are we helping folks get into housing, but making sure that when they're in those homes, they are able to maintain them and retain that wealth for future generations. Our income range so far our average is about $54,000. We're working with families as low as $12,000 annually. And on average, the families that have participated in this program so far have been in their house for about 26 years. So why does this matter? I know you all have a copy of this presentation, so I'm not going to go through all of these, but I want to point out a couple of things on here. The first is mental health. I think this is not something that we often talk about in conjunction with affordable housing. But Habitat did a 3-year project working with older adults, making home modifications and accessibility modifications. We did a pre and post survey before and after work, and we're able to show a significant decrease in depressive symptoms in older adults post repair modifications. So there really is a tie, not just to physical health, but also to mental health. And again, the preservation of wealth, right? There are a lot of families that we're working with that are at risk of losing their homes, and that's not just impactful for that family at that time, right? It's impactful for generations to come. And so finally, we have been able to leverage the county's dollars to get another $500,000 from the state over the last 2 years in 2 tranches. I don't believe for a second we would have had access to that funding if it hadn't been for the county's initial investment. And then we've been able to bring in additional private and government dollars as well. So that investment and commitment from the county and certainly more families. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we take questions, I want to make sure that our friends have an opportunity to also give their remarks, and I will be ready for your questions.
Thanks, Aspasia. Thanks, Aspasia. So yeah, I just wanted to start with saying, CASA numbers are getting crushed right now. by rising rents throughout the county. We've seen rents going up 40 and 50% in many properties. As historically looking over the last 40 years, rents have always been higher than all other forms of CPI. And over the last year alone, rents have doubled what regular CPI has. Why? People will pay whatever it takes to have a roof over their head. So as we heard from some of the other panelists in regards to how high percentage, over 50% of renters in Prince George's County are paying more than 30% of their budget. So I want to say that I didn't introduce myself. I'm Trent Leon Nierman. I'm the Maryland Organizing Director for CASA, and I'm with my colleague, Jose Flores Coronado, who's a Research and Policy Analyst with CASA. So, I want to say that renters not only are getting crushed, but they're getting displaced. Currently in Bladensburg, the renters are on rent strike to prevent that from happening. And renters should not have to go on rent strike to negotiate and stop prices from going up so incredibly, right? And the reason that they've had to do that partially is because you all as legislators right now have no mechanism to prevent this rent gouging from happening. Right now, there's nothing saying that you all can stop percentages from going up enormously in Prince George's County, and that's what we're asking for you to change. Some of the properties in the worst conditions are raising the rents the most, even without improving those conditions. Rent stabilization works. It helps the most number of people the quickest. And I want to assure you that definitely CASA members will be showing up and sharing their stories at the council just to highlight this. You may have been seeing it in local campaigns around the county. I want to share also that, we are actually not going to be lifting this up on the state level. We're a part of a coalition called Renters United Maryland, and we've decided that we can win stronger legislation on the county levels and the local levels. So I do want to share that with you because we're asking you all specifically as a council to make this happen. I can say that there will be housing lobbyists that come out, as they have in Laurel, in a small municipality, to push some of the fear tactics. They will say that rent stabilization defers development. This is not true. In other cities with rent stabilization, they have equal number of building permits and construction has not decreased. They will say that properties cannot maintain, do the maintenance necessary. This is not true. You can ask Tacoma Park; they have very good maintenance in a lot of their properties. They will say to pass this on the state level, but when we're talking to municipalities working towards passing this, they're saying that why don't you do this on the county level, right? So they're just pushing the buck. So I have a packet. I'm going to pass it over to Jose, but in this packet there's just a CASA stance along with other partners on rent stabilization. This is the stars. We're asking to work with you all to get to the moon, right? There's also an Attorney General opinion letter in this packet that states explicitly that counties and municipalities do have the right to pass rent stabilization and rent control, which is distinct from rent stabilization. And then the final piece in this is just last week in the city of Mount Rainier, the city council introduced legislation on rent stabilization, so just a copy of their legislation is here. I'm just going to pass it over to Jose.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for sharing all of that, Trent. I'm here specifically to provide some insights on what's going on in the adjacent county, Montgomery County, where Bill 2222 has been introduced, which is a rent stabilization bill that CASA has most definitely been advocating for. This bill is pretty much an extension of a COVID policy in which rent increases were capped annually. The council will be voting on it very soon, and we're putting a lot of pressure. We have seen a lot of support. We have also seen support from the county executive, who is raising up such an important piece of legislation, even in the face of scare tactics by developers. Lastly, I want to maybe make a tangible result of how impactful a policy like this could be. I want you all to think about all the families that are struggling just to pay the rent right now with a 10% increase, 15% increase, 20% increase, which are not absurd, which are seen very often. What will they do? Parents will have to work more hours, get more jobs, and young people in the households will see those burdens that their families have to take on. With those burdens present, a lot of young people will have to make the choice of making their own money at young ages, whether instead of being in school and focusing on things like that. So I do want to really stress how important rent stabilization is, and we want you all to consider it and put it into law.
Thank you. A couple of things real quick, Ms. Riata. Number one, I live in Laurel, but this is not Laurel. And I think, Trent, you recall, I requested legislation last year to do this, and we were told by our council that we could. I wanted to introduce something that was seen that week when I heard about it, so I'm very excited about that, yes. And Ms. Riata's taken the ball, and she's been pushing legislation. I think we've got a majority of the council that supports this. Like I said, it's not you and Laurel fighting that battle. I've been following that battle, and I'll turn it to Ms. Riata at this point. So I think you have more receptive audience here.
One, just thanking you for everyone for the presentation and the information. This is something that's really important to us as a council. It is a priority for our people's agenda. I was sad that we weren't able to, on our first day of our first legislative day, introduce a temporary hold for rent stabilization. There was some issues with the draft, so we had to pull it, but it will be resubmitted. It will allow us to have 6 months hold rent stabilization, allowing us to work on a comprehensive bill so we can stop the current bleeding and then work on a permanent solution. And as our chair mentioned, I have the votes to pass it. So thank you for, and all, I had more than, I had 6 colleagues that proposed on that bill. So I hope to have their names beside again when we reintroduce the bill. So I just want to name that we're committed to that. It's part of our agenda, and it's something that we plan on getting done in year 1. And I also I had a question about the development and kind of like the goal of low and middle, development. And just from a strategy perspective, does that look like inclusionary zoning? Is that like the solution where we're seeing market rate and then some set asides? Or what is like the strategy around reaching that goal of both middle and low income housing?
So I'm gonna start the answer on that and then pass it to our partners. So the county did do an inclusionary study in 2019 at third-party economists, and at the time the conclusion was that it wasn't applicable and feasible yet in the county. So you can still do a lot of mixed income with an array of income levels within a development and within a project in the county, and that's what we do without having to use the inclusionary zoning tool. I want us to think about inclusionary zoning as a tool, not as the end product. The end product is producing housing for people of all incomes. We will be redoing the inclusionary zoning study every few years because as market conditions change, there will be a time where it will be time for us to do an inclusionary zoning program, but that study was done a few years ago and the economics were not quite there. But when we do support the affordable housing project, that project can have some unrestricted units and then different units at different income levels. So we always try to produce income mix. Does that answer your question?
Ms. Aki?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank all of you for being here today. And, I was able to get the first bill passed that put a lid on rent increases during the pandemic, but trying to extend it has been a fight. And I'm glad to have my colleague here, Ms. Riata, who is taking up the battle and we appreciate all of your help as well. A couple of notes I saw. It seems that there's a great need for housing, and I appreciate that. There's numbers about the regional housing targets on, I think it was page 11. It said that we need at least 75% of the new housing to be affordable, at pretty aggressive rates. And I'm just curious, when you go Montgomery County, DC, Northern Virginia, what does that look like for them compared to us? Because one of the problems we have is if we're making our housing super affordable and everybody who needs cheap housing comes here, and everybody with great income, well, affordable in Montgomery County or DC is a lot higher income. And so then they have more income taxes to spend and are able to do much more for their area. So we talk about these regional approaches, and I do think it's a regional issue. Do you all have ideas of how we can kind of share the wealth, spread around some of the needs and some of the benefits?
Yes, I think on the slide that I shared, I actually had the different goals broken out. COG set a regional target for everyone to do that 75% affordable at the low and middle amount. We actually did jurisdiction-specific targets, and we've been partnering with HAND on their housing indicator tool to actually track progress against those targets for each jurisdiction. And so the 75% is kind of the general, I would say, average across all jurisdictions in the region, but every jurisdiction, we looked at them individually based on the households you currently have in your jurisdiction, and then aging them forward and estimating what their incomes would be. And generally speaking, people did about 75 to 80% of the housing in every jurisdiction needs to be at that level. It varies somewhat from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, but all jurisdictions really need to be producing that. So that's the first thing I say. We can't just have one jurisdiction take the load. As you know, we have to have all jurisdictions focus on that. And that's one of the reasons we've been trying to push and work with regional partners to really have everybody focus on these same goals.
Right, but when you say affordable and you look at, one area has incomes of $200,000 and another area has incomes of $90,000, what's affordable in one area and affordable in another are quite different. As a result, Prince George's County ends up providing already most of the naturally occurring affordable housing in the DMV. I just want to make sure that the other areas step up a lot more than we already do, because we're already doing our part. We might need to provide more housing, but I think that we have produced all the naturally occurring affordable housing, and we need Northern Virginia and DC and Montgomery County to step up their part of it. So I do want these formulas you all come up with to reflect.
If I can just jump in here, I think that you hit on an important point in that there's not one solution, right? There's not a regional solution that works for every community. Solutions need to be context specific. But I think the important thing is to look at the residents of Prince George's County. When we created these regional targets, we looked at contributions, we looked at every single jurisdiction that was part of this. And came up with what we thought was ambitious but achievable for every jurisdiction. And it needs to be tailored to meet the needs of the Prince George's County residents who are also facing housing cost burden. So absolutely, you're 100% right. It's a regional solution. We can't all, so we have to work together to solve this problem. But those solutions can look very different depending on the communities. And I think it's important for us to all look at what our own communities need.
Right, I just want to make sure that you keep that thought on the forefront and not just look at the region and say, yay, Prince George's, it's cheap there, we can put it all over there. And we'll keep all the doctors and lawyers and people making $1 million and let them have everybody else and good luck. So that's how it feels right now. There was a note of,
This is the exact issue that I wish you would come speak to us about. How the region distributes affordable housing, and who would like to join us for that? That would be helpful, so that we can understand what the region looks like. We have a lot of need for affordable housing, but we also feel that there's not adequate distribution. Now, when Todd made the presentation that you made on this chapter, in 2019, I asked Parker Penny what our affordable housing looked like in the county, and the answer came back, and I don't know if it's the same, but it's not going to change that much, but in excess of 50% of all housing in Prince George's County is quote affordable in the region. So when you have that number as a baseline, the question then becomes, what's the affordable housing percentage in other jurisdictions? And how does that break up by housing stock and age? So those are the kind of things that we need to just understand so we can have a more intelligent conversation. And also when we go to COG and we hear the regional discussion, so where's everybody else in the region on this topic? Because one of the things that I think most of us would agree with, concentration of poverty or concentration of low income yields other problems. It also yields less tax revenue to pay for the problem, the solutions to the problems. So this all goes hand in hand. So this is like a continuation of the conversation. We're running out of time, so I'm going to let the dive go and just close the questions that we all have to go. But just to give you an understanding of where the data that we're looking for that really helps. So thank you.
Yeah, for sure, and please include the salaries of the people or the wealth of the people by jurisdiction as well. And just real quick, there was a mention of accessory dwelling units. I'm all for them. It's hard though to figure out how to do them responsibly because certain areas have tremendous parking problems, for example, already. And if you add more density, then it's going to be a problem. So I don't know if you all have had to figure out how to deal with that, where that is. And then, of course, the mention of smaller homes needed as well. There are more than 30,000 seniors living alone in Prince George's County. And the smaller homes, now a townhome, they can't walk up all the stairs. Definitely is needed, so just throwing that. But if you have the parking issue solved for ADUs, please throw in the here.
Just to mention that, I think your point around ADUs, it's been also a regional consideration in several jurisdictions, Montgomery, Alexandria, have also looked and done studies to say, where might ADUs be appropriate? How do we deal with things like parking? And they have some lessons kind of coming out of those that we can translate for the county as well.
I'd love to see that. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I would just add, yeah, the biggest issue on Campaign Trail in my district, all over my district was about, there's too many people living in our suburban neighborhoods. I mean, the streets weren't designed for this, and all that. So those are issues that, in the transit-rich area, absolutely, ADUs make a lot of sense, but I think there's a lot of tensions and things that we're going to really grapple with on those issues. But my question is about, I'd like to dig in a little bit more on the inclusionary zoning and to understand better what and I heard a little bit about this, that some of the economics not being right for doing inclusionary zoning currently. I'm not sure, can we talk about that and understand that a little better? And inclusionary zoning, as I've always understood it, is you either mandate or if you are providing some type of incentive, financial incentive, and you can say that, oh, the 10% of units in a new building are going to be set aside for X percentage of the every new income. 10% or 20% or 15%, whatever that number is. So yeah, I'd love to hear more.
So I shared the study with you, we can have a follow-up conversation. There is a whole study done. So I will share that with you and we can have a follow-up conversation.
Oh, it's one of those follow-up conversation. Okay, sounds good. Okay, very good. Thank you. All right.
Okay, well, thank you all for your presentations. A lot of information, very good information. And, if possible, thank you for your hard work. I know that you on top of this issue, and we can work with you to get a solution. So, thank you all. Have a good evening. Thank you, retreat. I don't say this was today, but we were an issue.
Great job. Great.
Good night, everybody.
Today was really, really good.
Yeah.